Where do you see, we'll begin to wrap up here with the question, where do you see the church and our society in the next 50 years? Do you ever think about that?
I think about that all the time.
Such rapid changes.
One of the things that really encourages me is the fact that people aren't, this is going to sound weird, because people, who's having kids? Conservative Orthodox Catholics. So, and I mean that not in the sense of right-wing people, I just mean people in terms of their faith and their morals.
And Mormons.
Yeah. I think we might be I think the church itself, not in the eyes of the world, but in the quality of her life, could actually be really good because of that.
This is why I love the Benedict option. Did you read that book?
3 or 4 times.
I haven't yet. I have some hesitations
and
about
Leah
it.
Labresco's Building the Benedict
I haven't read that yet. Is it good?
It's very good.
She's excellent, Leah.
Do you feel like it, because my only real hesitation with it, and again, I have not read these books, is that we forsake the culture for these things, and I so love.
Yeah, I think the
culture.
name lends people to think that that's the case. That we're going to retreat to our monasteries while the culture falls apart.
Yeah.
I mean, to my mind, he's explained again and again why he doesn't necessarily mean that. I think what he's talking about is we need to retreat into Catholic cultures or Christian cultures where we can know of our heritage, what we believe, why we believe it. We need to begin doing human things again, cease being distracted so that we can live a beautiful human life, and then to go out into the culture or whatever this thing is to bring the gospel. I don't think it's a full-scale retreat at all, and I think he's been careful to say that.
I think, so you have this element where the culture is colonizing us. So missionary activity in the 1800s was too often aligned with colonization. So you're a Western power, you're conquered an African nation, and then in come the missionaries. And the culture, or the kings and queens or whoever, was supportive of the missionaries because you're going to make the local population like us. Not love us, but be like us, act like us, think like us. And too often Christianity carried with it that colonization. And then the other side of it now today,
that's a very
when you're
interesting take.
aping the culture in order to, this is the problem that I think the Benedict doctrine recognizes. Too often evangelization apes the culture.
Yeah.
And wants to highlight the good parts of the culture and bring Christ in the middle of the good parts and do this and do that. Like Bishop Barron in his movie commentaries, he says, I'm not reviewing the film, I'm not a film critic. I'm pointing out the light and the darkness within the big themes and stuff. And so you have this element where you realize that once you start doing that, you find the culture colonizes you. And you look around, like they used to do this, this one group, there's a podcast called This Cultural Moment, evangelical, non-denominational people, and they're leading these things, and you find one's in Melbourne, and the other one's in Portland, and they talk about how these are the most progressive cities, in the world in one sense, and what are they? They're all homogenous. They're white, wealthy, young adults. Urban living. It's we're so progressive, yet no one is
different,
dissimilar to us, right? And so they talk about how you do ministry in this setting. And so I would say that my problem with the Benedict option, I like it because the idea is re-emphasizing you can't have Christianity without a community. And for so often, it was detached from community and placed within the individual. You could say that is very Protestant-esque. That has been carried on the shoulders of the Magisterial Reformation, aka Luther and Calvin, and their descendants. The Radical Reformation of the Anabaptists that happened a century later was much more community-focused. And in a way, they recovered a sense of church that I think in the Catholics, we've lost now that we're in America. We used to have ethnic enclaves, that's gone. Now we're just kind of like this personal conversion model, which is why the danger of podcasts is I don't need the parish, I got the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't need to go to the university, I got Pints with Aquinas. And then when I level up from that, I got Father Nicanor and I can read this and do this. But that's always been there. I mean, books have always been there, whatever. The issue is, how am I investing in community? Do I owe my neighbor, the Muckenthalers, what do I owe them? So I had a diocese say, we want you to be our director of evangelization. And I said, no. And they're like, you won't even consider it? This is a next step in your career. I said, it's not well, I mean, there is an element where it is my career. I got 4 kids, buy my book. But this thing, and I sat there and I remember this, my beautiful neighbor, right? And their family, their kids, all of this stuff. And I said, okay, so I have a neighbor named Angie who comes into my house, brings her kids over, walks in the garage door, makes herself a cup of coffee, pours another one for my wife, and they sit down and talk. And there was no phone conversation that happened beforehand. I said, how much is that worth, and can you pay me in money? Like, is my wife going to have that friendship over there? See, this is what we owe when we become rooted. It's not just about me climbing the corporate ladder. What do I owe my neighbor? And we never think about that. And so my whole thing with the Benedict option is, it's brilliant when it really pulls us back to community. I think it can have this tendency to be anti-evangelistic, which means we double down on who we are, but I think part of who we are is mission, right? So I don't think he negates that. I don't think he emphasizes the community is meant to be a community in mission, not just, oh, look at these great witnesses, but like, I'm going out and inviting you into my house. I'm going to my next door neighbor and inviting you over. If I have community, I do that, and that's what I do. So inspired by the Benedict option and building the Benedict option, I bring over a bunch of people. I have some guys that I know and love who love sports ball. I do not. I cannot talk about it. My wife is more of a man than I'll ever be. Rock star. But she loves sports, and she can have conversations with it. I can't. And so I was inviting this one guy over, big college football fan, all this stuff. I invited men over that I knew he could have a relationship with. And I paid for all the food and all this stuff. It's very, like, bring in those who aren't going to pay you back. And that's not the point. The point is having fellowship with each other. And that's what I think is good.
Yeah.
But it can tend to collapse when it's like, well, these are my 7 friends and I'm only going to, it can become cliquish very quickly.
Yeah, that's no doubt.
Yeah.
You didn't give a short take. Where will we be in 50 years?
Holy moly, I didn't.
You sure didn't.
The American parish model is not going to last. The suburban captivity of the churches has ruined Catholicism, understandably so. The majority of Catholics, white flight, all that stuff, all the demographic shifts to the suburbs meant regional parishes, non-local parishes. And now we're going to watch, if the statistics are going to be believed, the greatest immigration back into cities since the Industrial Revolution. And where is all these tiny little churches that are neighborhood street churches, whatever? They're all sold because there's not enough income. They're too poor. The demographic shift. No one's reaching out to the African American community in the Catholic Church. So you have this collapse of these churches and congregations. But now when the hipsters are going back into the cities, not just the gentrified areas, but all over, the Catholic Church isn't there anymore. It's 30 miles out, 45 minutes with traffic.
The church is now like a bar or just a concert hall.
Yeah, or your CrossFit gym or something like that. So all these things that the church has picked up, or lost, put down, namely community, culture has picked that up.
And what's so sad is the churches that we sold in the cities were often quite beautiful, and then we've built these ugly, monstrous things that look like Pizza Hut.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see a
Pizza Hut looks better.
And then what I'm curious about, I think coming up, we've all been obsessed with like beauty. That's kind of been the big thing for the past few years. I think we're going to start going into the good, because with all these things going on within our post-Christian culture, there's such a lack of good that as we begin to propose the good and live that out, and people like see that, there's going to be a draw to that. Like they're going to be drawn to us not by our great podcast, although we are great, but it's going to be more like that there's something here that I think that people are going to be drawn to, and I'm curious. I don't know what that's going to lead to, because I think that's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm curious to see what, like, again, like in half a century, where are we because of that? I wonder if the church is almost more of like a safe haven at that point in time.
A place of refuge.
A true,
Yeah, which is the exact reason why he called it the Benedict option, because in the end of Alistair McIntyre's book, After Virtue, he says, it's not that the barbarians at the gate, they've been ruling us for quite some time, and we're waiting for a new and doubtless very different St. Benedict. And so who's going to be that figure that creates the institutions that keep the virtues and civilization alive as it's collapsing all around us? And I think that is clearly catching foxes.
Yeah.
We are the Benedict option.
I do think, but I do think what you're going to see. I will end on this. Is I think the way things are set, the way things are arranged right now is going to implode.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Bishop Barron's with even the Pints with the Coinage chapters. Bishop Barron wants to do the Word on Fire Institute, where they have these houses in the city. That's responding to the market demand of people leaving suburbia and going urban, and there's nothing to feed their souls. So you have these things. What do they call, like fire?
You were going to have movements.
Well, yeah, but the fire rally, or the night fever.
Yeah, oh man.
They have these candlelight services of adoration, and it's just open and they usually do it in a cathedral because it's right downtown. And they open the doors and they invite people to come in and just light a candle and pray.
And
all of a
lead
sudden,
people to Jesus.
And all of a sudden it creates this interior dynamism. And I think when you're talking about the good, this is the problem though. And in that podcast, this cultural moment, they point this out. When I was growing up in the 90s, when I became a convicted Catholic, my sexual practices had to change, right? And people in my high school would look at that and be like, "You want to be a virgin? You're
Yes.
like, that's weird."
What's the new virgin?
Right. Well, that's weird, but there's an intensity and a heroicness to trying to do that. Now, the Christian sexual ethic is viewed as bigoted. And so someone trying to live the Christian sexual ethic is condemned. You're heteronormative, all that, you're monogamous, blah, blah, blah. And so I think this is going to be one of the great areas where we're going to have to figure out self-sacrificial generosity, loving your neighbor at your own expense is an evangelization that no one can deny. Like if I sacrifice so that you can be comforted in a time of hurt, right? Taking meals over to you, watching your kids if you're a single mom, whatever. I think that ability to inconvenience yourself for the sake of the gospel is what will convert hearts. And I think you can only do that in community, right? If you have people who yes, I understand that. But with today's social media, I know more about what's happening to people on the other side of the world with a tsunami or an earthquake than I knew about the single mom down the street. I don't know anything about her, and she lives right next to me, but I can open the paper. Who does that? I can open my phone. I can open the app, and so that's the danger, that community solves.
Yeah, beautiful. This has been such a fun discussion. Thank
It's
you.
all over the
Thank
place.
you.
This is
amazing.
great.
Yeah.
I gotta go to the bathroom again because I drank so much.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Boom.
Go team, go.
Yo, thanks for watching. You can watch the entire episode on YouTube if you want. You can listen to it at The Matt Fradd Show by subscribing on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And feel free to support me, patreon.com/MattFradd.